There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another review, this time of Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jedrowski. Tomasz Jedrowski is a Polish writer. His debut novel was published in 2020 in English, in other words, not translated. I absolutely loved it. It was a 5-star read for me, and I want to tell you why. It's set in Poland in 1980, and the protagonist is a young gay man named Ludwik. He is just finishing up his undergraduate degree. He is a voracious reader, and he is not quite out to himself. Just beginning to explore his sexuality, and in 1980 in Poland, anywhere in Eastern Europe, lots of other places in the world, it was not a good time to be gay. I related to his coming out so deeply that I felt Jedrowski captured in some kind of, dare I say it, universal way, the coming out experience. And so I was hooked by that part of the story immediately. And I also loved the fact that Jedrowski's protagonist, Ludwik, begins to explore his sexuality through gay literature. So he finds a samizdat, a bootlegged copy of James Baldwin's gay novel, Giovanni's Room, which he could have gotten arrested for having in his possession, and the bookseller could have gotten arrested for selling it to him. And his reaction to that novel and other roles that that novel plays in this novel ends up being quite important. You may want to read Giovanni's Room before you read this. I read Giovanni's Room 30 years ago and wish I had reread it before reading this. I didn't, but I acquired a new copy, and I will be rereading it fairly soon. But it's not essential. If you've ever been a bookish closet case like me, you're going to really relate to Ludwik in this novel. The setting, historically, geographically, politically, is also rendered really well, and of course that's where I couldn't relate to the various social factors that were complicating Ludwik's coming out even more than mine was a few years later in Saskatchewan, Canada. The political repression I was dealing with was quite superficial, comparatively. This story is told so well in the first person. It's addressed to the young man that becomes his lover, and that's the story of the novel. He falls in love at a work education camp with a beautiful young man named Janus. I'm not going to say very much more about the plot, but they fall in love, and that James Baldwin novel plays an instrumental part in how they get together. I will say that they spend several days, maybe even a few weeks, in this pastoral, natural setting where they are completely isolated from society, and they have this mind-blowingly gorgeous sexual romantic communion and swimming in the dark and otherwise, completely cut off from civilization, that was really poignant, erotically charged. I don't remember that it was erotically specific, but it was erotically charged and just beautiful to read. Then, of course, they have to go back to Warsaw and deal with life. The story goes from there, and I won't say any more about the love story or the story overall, other than that it was tough. It was tough going. And Jedrowski captures the interpersonal dynamics, the political dynamics, in a way that was really powerful. There were a lot of gut punches for me reading this book. I found myself reliving aspects of my own coming out, my own first love, and then experiencing what it would have been like to be in Warsaw in 1980, gay, straight, or otherwise, in a way that I thought was vividly described and also hit me in the gut. One thing also that I think is captured really precisely and powerfully is the dynamic that I think most gay men, probably other queer people, encounter in romantic relationships, which is there is often a mismatch between one person wants to be more out and the other wants to stay more in the closet, and that can cause lots of problems. And that is a big part of this story as well. And I thought that he described that in a way that showed how central that dynamic can be to queer relationships. Jedrowski also captures some really powerful moments of homoerotic affection that Ludwig experiences earlier in his life, where he's not out enough or old enough to take it the next step further. And in fact, his relationship with Janus kind of starts with some of those moments too. And those were really lovely to read about and just triggered lovely and sometimes painful memories of my own, of being in those situations where the heart and the heart-on knows what it wants, but it was too terrifying to seize the opportunity. And there's beautiful moments like that. A really fantastic debut novel. Not a perfect novel. I've already shared on my channel a couple times my favorite quote from the book. And so here it is again. It's just a couple lines of description near the beginning. In fact, it's just one sentence. That's one of the most beautiful sentences I've read this year, if not forever. It was the sort of early summer that erases any memory of other seasons. One where light and warmth clasp and feed you to the absolute. That sentence just gets all the way inside me, and I just think it's gorgeous. And there were no other sentences like that. I don't mean to say that the writing is bad, but there is a breeziness that is just comes right up to the boundary of kind of a slapdash quality, an urgency that I can feel that the protagonist can barely catch his breath getting the story out. Whether that's only the protagonist, maybe also the author, is an open question. But the fact that Jedrowski could write that sentence makes me really excited about his future as a writer. If that sentence had been absent from the book, I think I still would have really loved it. But that sentence gives me hope that in future works, Jedrowski will kind of catch his breath and more sentences like that will pop out onto the page, because the rest of it was very different, capturing, like I say, all these interpersonal political dynamics really well, really vividly. But he's capable of more of that kind of prose, and I hope I get to read it. So what do they say? A really promising debut that I really loved. And if any of this sounds good, please check out Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jedrowski. I loved it. Thanks for watching.